The topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the host and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Hey, welcome back, everyone, to the Geeks, Geezers, and Googlization Show, where we talk with HR and business thought leaders about living and working in a world where the wired, the tired, and technology converge. I'm your host, Ira Wolf, and we're back in the studio this week with Keith Campagna, my co-host, and our sponsors, JobVite and Success Performance Solutions. Last week, we did our first ever remote podcast at 2019 Cornerstone Convergence Conference. It was in San Diego, California. Yep. Had a great guest with Heidi Spierge. I'll get it right this time. Yeah, Heidi Spierge. She was great. Yeah, Chief Marketing Officer, Strategy Officer at Cornerstone. Really fortunate to have her because she was. She's worked with Cornerstone and she's known the organization for a long time, but she was actually with them for only 3.5 weeks. Now I guess she's there for a month. But we had a great interview. We had a good connection, and it was fun to do it live.
She was awesome. With the guest. I was jealous because I'm sure the audience knows I wasn't on that one.
But. Well, you would have just loved it, and it was a great event. Talk a little bit about that. I was there last year, and all I could. I was just hoping I was invited back, right. And this year I was invited back, and I was had the opportunity to be a speaker. So talked about creating an awesome candidate experience, which was certainly there. They had their focus is, they built a reputation on learning experience, and it just blew me away. I mean, we talked about, they had Oculus, right. and I've got my Oculus Go, but and I was just kind of looking what the next generation of that is, and we were able to participate in a bias. They had a bias training, and you literally walked into this room. And I don't remember the example. I think it was it might have been a kind of a young. It was a young group of people. But I think it was a black woman. But basically, when you sat down and looked through you were looking through her eyes. And
really?
So you were sitting down there and you saw the interaction, and there were 3 people. When you were in this they were on a sofa and a chair and bean bags, and so you were literally in that virtual organization and going through that. It was really amazing of hearing the conversation, and all of a sudden you're starting to feel uncomfortable because of some of the not the language they were using, but the tone just and the suggestions, and you can some of it was staged, but all of a sudden you're starting to kind of lose it there because I had asked them, were there any companies doing this for recruitment to understand what the culture was like, engagement, and there's certainly the going there. You still have to put the big headset on, so it's not ideal, but they had a lot of other platforms. That instant micro learning, is what they're called. And I've been interviewed a couple times. There's a couple articles up on the Cornerstone blog, which, by the way, is cornerstoneondemand.com/rework. It is a really great blog. They got a lot of thought leaders, a lot of good people that are up there producing content. And I was interviewed for a couple things on microlearning, but the focus is on all of talent management. But it's just amazing of this microlearning, the ability to be able to access learning when you need it. And that was the whole message out there. Right. And so I'm really excited about today about having Daniel Levine. We're going to get to Daniel in just a minute. He is he's known as one of the world's best known trends experts. He's the editor of Wikitrend site. It's wikitrend.org. And Kent, we were looking up some of the things, so we're going to talk a lot about that. He's been called the ultimate guru of cool by CNN, which we love those buzzes.
Find out what that's about.
Yeah. So when we're talking about that, one of the trends hopefully we'll talk about is learning and microlearning and things about the workplace. But you've been pretty busy with life-work integration. What's going on with that? You had a nice interview yesterday.
I split ways, parted ways with JobVite at the end of April, dove into the deep end for life work integration, which is my consulting concept. I've put it out in front of several people. And the idea really is that work-life balance is a failed HR policy. The end result is disengaged employees and stressed out people. So I think it makes good sense for employers to look at the problem a different way and start to help employees develop their personal lives. And everything boils down to how we view stress, manage stress. And so I put it out there, Ira. And a good friend of mine, Jeffrey Gitomer, who is a New York Times bestselling author.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of people heard about Jeffrey. Yeah, he's been out there for a long time.
Yeah, I reached out to pick his brain, and he said he just threw me to the wolves. He says, just do it on my podcast next week. I'm busy. Let's get on the podcast. So I stepped all over myself on the podcast. I stuttered. I did all that stuff, but I didn't care. I was having a good time, and it got out there yesterday, and we've gotten a lot of good feedback. I'm also partnering up with an organization that is going to help HR teams. We talk about HR struggles with getting out of their own way because they can't build business cases. They don't have the time to learn modern day acumen to help justify an investment in software. So now I'm working with an organization to help do that. So it's just been a wild ride these last couple of weeks, and progress is being made.
Yeah, and that's one of the topics I've got coming up 2 weeks. Actually, it's less than 2 weeks now, the SHRM conference. Yep. Just putting the final touches on my keeping the H in HR, yep. Which that concept changed because initially it was about some of the ethical things, and we're still going to talk about that. But as I show that one graph, and I think you've seen it, where the gap between technologies and business and individuals, the growth, the change, yep. And then HR, they call it, the Deloitte graph shows it as public policy. Mm-hmm. But I'm looking at that, I'm saying this is HR is down there. It's almost like a flat linear line, and then you see the spike, of technology changes. But HR is trying to close the gap between where they are and technology with technology, right. And not understanding what technology does, all the implications. Right. So it's a rabbit hole.
And it's something, my career was in enterprise software sales, and it's wild to see this coming to the big screen, so to speak, because there's the difference between automation and using technology.
Well, yeah, I don't want to get too far because I want to bring Daniel in there, but it's one of the things that I want to bring up is that there's all this automation, and one of the articles. Mm-hmm. On his site on the wikitrend.org was about an interview assistant. Yep. And I know I've mentioned this on conferences, and when I speak to people, and everybody blows it off and they go, mm-hmm. We're losing the personal touch, and I go, that's only because the bar is set so low. Right. Its organizations are horrible interviewers. Right. Right. They really are horrible. The predictability of they're just not good at asking the questions, and it's not only asking the questions, it's observing what the answer is, and then and asking those questions in an unbiased way, and not that the chatbot's perfect, or that it's even better than a good interviewer, mm-hmm. but it's better than most interviewers only because they're so bad. So the bar is pretty low, but I think that probably creates a good segue to bring Daniel on. Yes, just kind of a quick intro for Daniel. I already did a little bit, but he is the director of the Avant-Garde Institute, a New York-based consultancy that helps business people profit from trends via live keynote presentations, hands-on play shops. I'd love to participate in one of those. Yep. And multi-channel media offerings. He's the editor of wikitrend.org. That's singular. We'll have to ask about it's Wikitrends is the site, but wikitrend.org is the website. He leads a team of trend spotters who track the latest ideas and experiences around the globe. I was paying attention to the business one, but there's a whole lot of categories, so we'll get in there. He's worked with General Motors, American Express, Microsoft, South African Tourism, and the UN World Tourism Organization. Works with businesses and governments to help them become more relevant, innovative, and profitable, which is right up the alley of what we're here to talk about. Daniel, welcome to Geek Skeezers and Googleization.
Yes, thank you very much. Wonderful to be here, Ira and Keith. And let me tell you, I couldn't have written that introduction better myself.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we tweaked it a little bit. So there's a couple things here. Let's learn about. I don't know. Maybe you did. You were somebody asked you in elementary school, what are you going to be when you grow up? And you said, I'm going to create the Avant-Garde Institute and be a wiki and be a trend spotter.
Right.
How did you get into this? How did it evolve? And then we'll get into some specific trends.
Yeah, I've had a very unusual path to work life. Most people, when you ask them how they ended up somewhere, they'll tell you a story about how one thing after the next sort of happened to them. And for me, I was really cognizant from a young age that I wanted to make my own direction and do my own thing.
I understand that.
Yeah. I would say I was lucky enough to be in a place that I could do that. So I'm grateful for that. And what I did was when I was a senior in college, I decided that I wanted to travel around the world, but I didn't have enough money to do it. And so I thought, sort of in my naivete, well, it would be cool if I could write about it, travel and write and get paid for writing. And at the time, there was a big travel guidebook series called Frommer's, which the geezer among you may know.
Yeah.
And so I was living in Manhattan, and I called up Arthur Frommer. I found his name in the phone book. Phone book. It's those things. It's paper and it's bound.
We just
on
got one
side.
the other day. Yeah. And my wife walked down and said, "Should we get rid of this one because we'll get a second one?" And it was like, "Get rid of the second one too." Why?
Yeah. I'm surprised you even got one these days. I haven't seen one in ages. But in any event, I found this guy Arthur Frommer in the phone book, and I called him up, and I invited him to lunch, and he was kind enough to come, and I pitched him to write for their guide on Europe. And to make a long story short, 2 months later, I was in London writing about London. And that really snowballed. I ended up writing 10 books for Frommer's, 10 of their biggest travel guidebooks to cities and regions around the world. And then I left them after sort of taking that as far as it could go. And I got some business partners together and started a publishing company. And we started publishing books on places all over the world, and we were hiring a lot of writers in every city that we were writing guides to, and so sometimes 50 writers to be a collaborative effort to put books together. Mm-hmm. And then as you certainly know, and your listeners certainly know, that people have stopped reading as much, and everything gravitated online, and so I sort of saw the writing on the wall with in the publishing industry, and right around the same time I got a phone call from Deutsche Telekom in Germany, and they asked me to take a bunch of their C-level execs on a trip to a few cities around Europe to show them the current state of retail. And it was really sort of prescient of them to call me up for that, because I really knew what was going on. I had my finger on the pulse with these books that I was creating, and they paid really well for that. And that's when I sort of connected my own dots, and I said, "Wait a second, there's a business here. Businesses are interested in knowing what's happening now and what's going to be in the next few years." So those writers who were writing all these books, and they were now numbering in the many hundreds, I started using them for other stuff, which was collecting information about everything new, unique, and unusual happening in the world. And those writers became the genesis of our trend spotting network. So I'm no longer in the publishing industry. I'm going back 15 years now. Yeah. And for the last 15 years, I've been the head of the Avant-Garde Institute, a trends consultancy based in New York City. And we track business trends, consumer trends, and tech trends across the industrial spectrum, and help companies understand those trends and work with them to come up with good ways of using those trends to make themselves more relevant, innovative, and profitable. And that's my very long elevator story.
I love it. Let me ask you this. I was wondering how long ago this story took place and you mentioned 15 years ago, but what stands out to you in your experience, a trend that you didn't see, like that made the biggest impact that you didn't expect it to make?
Start with my failures right away. That's great.
Well, the surprises, right?
To be honest with you, I wasn't sold on Facebook when they first came out.
Yeah.
I mean, that blindsided me, and partially because I'm not a fan. I've never been a fan of it. So it sort of shows how our own biases can get involved in these things as well.
If it makes you feel better, I don't have a Facebook profile either. I don't know if you do or not, but I'm not a fan.
Yeah, well, you're a Gen X. You're stuck in the middle. It's millennials used to, and now all the baby boomers do, right?
Yeah.
So,
right, exactly.
Yeah, so we're having a class reunion coming up, and that's how a lot of the contact is. And
sure,
but it also shows the great divide between those that are connected that aren't. Because there's I grew up when I still remember calling into the switchboard, and I'd say, hey, I want to call. I'm calling my mother's store, and they know who I was talking about, and she'd say, she's not there, she's at the hairdresser, and they'd connect me to the hairdresser to talk to my mother. So yeah,
that is a geezer.
Yeah. Well, we also lived in rural. We were in they had dial phones a long time before they reached the area that I lived in. But anyway,
gotcha.
So Keith asked you what trends were unexpected. What are some of the trends that you see now that have got you really excited? Obviously, you see a whole lot, and just to kind of give some reference. You and I got connected about 2 months ago. I put out a request for someone to talk about caregivers and the impact it was having on the workforce. And I think it was Lauren reached out to me. Mm-hmm. And basically I went up and I found it, and we couldn't make the connection 2 months ago for that show. But it was about how geeks, geezers, Googleization, demographics, technology, all converging to impact us. And again, our show is primarily about the future of work and people within that. So within that context, what do you see that when you again, you wouldn't invest in Facebook, but there's something else that that you would go down the road?
Right. So, I work with a lot of different companies across the industrial spectrum, and I do a lot of keynote speaking. I'm at conferences for companies and associations, really across the board. And what's fascinating to me is that the same kinds of things are happening in every industry, but most people who work in business sort of have blinders on. They know an awful lot about what they're doing, but they know less about what's happening in the rest of the world and what other companies and brands and organizations are doing to attract those same customers. So where I add value, where I come in is to help them see what's working in other industries and help them come up with innovative ideas that they can use in their own industry to take advantage of those same trends. And so, there's so many trends out there, obviously, but there are some that are more important than others. And right now, for example, we are living in one of the sort of fastest times in the history of humanity. The acceleration of culture is so fast, and it just keeps getting faster and faster. And so I'm seeing a lot of companies become very successful and do very well by embracing that trend and thinking about, okay, how can we better serve our customers who we know are some of the most time-pressed people in the history of humanity. But using examples from different industries, I'm helping companies understand what they could be doing to help to help their customers and to make more money. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And just before the show, again, I did this last night and prepping for this, and then I found it again today. and I shared it with Keith because Keith was in the staffing industry before. Take a step back there. In my book, Recruiting in the Age of Globalization, which the original title was When the Shift Hits Your Plan, which is now the subtitle. And, within that, it was talking about what are the disruptors from outside the industry? And when I was writing the book, I attended a conference, and Jeff Hoffman, who you may be familiar with, he was one of the co-founders from Priceline. He has a super good serial entrepreneur doing a lot of social entrepreneurship at this point. He had a phrase called info sponging. And what he does every morning is he gets up and he reads something that has nothing to do with anything he knows about in an industry. And the example he gave was, the drive-in or the drive-through in banking came from McDonald's. It's like, how could you drive up and order food? How could you drive up and do a transaction? And of course, the banking industry blew it off, and now it's even gone to the next step with mobile. But then you look at Uber. Uber and Lyft didn't come from the auto industry. Airbnb didn't come from hotels. So one of the trends that you talked about was how Uber is starting to build a temporary staffing agency. Now, I speak and work with a lot of staffing agencies, and I can tell you Uber is not on their radar as a competitor, except when you think about it, their database is people looking for part-time work, and they're from all different occupations. And they put, and they're, within the database, they know what hours they're available. And where their patterns are and what their commuting distance are. They know a lot about their people. So, staffing people don't look at don't look at the next Manpower or Administaff or whoever might be out there. I mean, you got to be looking outside that. Who's the biggest threat? And when you think about Amazon, or not Amazon, but Uber, having all that information, it's incredible. By
the way, I just want to say I love those examples. I'm going to steal some of them for my work. Those are totally bang on, and especially this idea about that innovation innovation in your own industry is probably happening outside of your industry. You're speaking about the advantage of looking outside your industry to innovate within.
Yeah, and I've written that, and again, it was in my book, but I also wrote a couple articles about that info sponging, and I give credit to Jeff all the time because that was his title. And he has a habit. Every morning he gets up, and for 10 or 15 minutes, he picks up he does a search. I don't know if he literally picks up a publication, but he does a search, and he says it's on just what's going on in some industry I don't know anything about. And how could that impact his world? Yeah.
I got a question for you.
Yeah, that's great.
Daniel, you mentioned how you work with companies that embrace trends, and let's just go with the Uber example here. Inside of Uber is a group of people that embrace the idea that they might not just be a outsourced transportation company. What else is this? How is what are you seeing, or how would you define a company that is open-minded enough, maybe, or do you see more people that are closed-minded? Because as a software sales guy in my career, most of the time, I was always looking for the people that quote unquote get it. So what is it that? Go ahead. There's a cycle that just seems to always go on, where you have these scrappy startups who are able to turn on a dime, and then if all goes well, they grow into a big legacy company where they turn around like a giant aircraft carrier, and their business is then usurped by the next uppity upstart. It's sort of the cycle that we've seen since the beginning of capitalism. It's been said ad infinitum about the number of the companies who are part of the Fortune 500. There's very few today who were on that list 50 years ago or 20 years ago.
It's just a cycle that keeps going. So, big companies, as many of your listeners know, try to get around that by creating departments that are sort of self-sufficient, and where you have project owners and innovation centers that are happening within companies. The intrapreneurs who are given a lot of latitude, even though they're on the payroll, to sort of run their own company inside the company. And then, of course, the big companies are just buying up little companies that are the innovators. That's probably the easiest and most reliable way of doing that. It's this sort of I'll tell you what, if you had like the perfect answer to that, there's a whole, that's where you should be heading off in consulting with those giant companies and pulling in the billions.
Yeah, that's our goal. That's our goal. Hey, you're listening to the Geeks, Geezers, and Googlization Show. We're with our guest, Daniel Levine from Avant-Garde Institute and editor of Wikitrend.org. We're talking about emerging trends, what impact they're going to have on our economy, our lives, our jobs, our future. We're going to be taking a short break. We're going to hear from our sponsors, JobVite and Success Performance Solutions. We will be right back, and we'll be continuing to talk about what some technologies are coming on board that might be replacing jobs, how that's going to affect us. And we'll be, again, right back in 2 minutes.
Behind everything you're searching for is something you're actually looking for. When you search with the Real Yellow Pages, you get more than a contractor. You get a whole new curb appeal. It's not just getting directions to a dry cleaner with YP.com. It's rescuing an old favorite from the back of the closet. And it's more than finding a locksmith with YP.com on your mobile. It's getting to sleep in your own bed. Whatever it might be, there are more ways to search and more ways to find exactly what you're looking for with the Real Yellow Pages, YP.com, and YP.com on your mobile, only from AT&T.
What's up, everyone? This is Keith from the Geeks, Geezers, and Googlization Show, powered by JobVite. JobVite knows career paths are made by people, not by open job requisitions. JobVite's platform ties recruitment marketing directly to applicant tracking and onboarding, creating continuous candidate engagement that effectively connects recruiters with qualified passive candidates. Used by over 50,000 recruiters placing over 1 million jobs, JobVite's platform impacts every company in every industry. Check us out at jobvite.com.
Listen carefully. Up to 9 out of 10 job candidates visiting your company career page leave before completing an application. You heard that right. 90% of candidates who want to apply for a job at your company don't. That's just plain crazy, especially in today's tight labor market. Candidate experience matters. Stop turning candidates away. Let Success Performance Solutions help. Call us at 800-803-4303 or register at successperformancesolutions.com/W4CY. Schedule a no-obligation consultation and get special access to insider tips to recruit faster and hire smarter.
Welcome back to the Geeks, Geezers, and Googlization Show. I'm your host, Ira Wolf. I'm here with my co-host, Keith Campagna, and our special guest today is Daniel Levine from the Avant-Garde Institute and Wikitrend.org. By the way, we forgot to mention this on the first half. We are live, so you can call in today, or you can go to the W4CY.com website, and if you have any questions, you can send us a chat. And we did have one question, but before I get to that, we want to have a little fun, Daniel, find out a little bit more about you. I know you said you don't, I think you said you don't read print. I don't know if you don't use books, but, I assume you read.
Yeah. I know how to read, yeah.
You know how to read, right? Okay, good.
So what book are you currently reading a book?
I am, and I actually just currently finished a chapter of a new book that's coming out related to that. The book that I just finished reading once again was Alvin Toffler's Future Shock, which came out in 1970. It was a seminal book
Yeah,
about
absolutely.
about the future.
I've actually mentioned that in the Recruiting in the Age of Globalization. So.
Yeah. I mean, it was a famous book. It was probably one of the most famous nonfiction books of the decade.
Unfortunately, I remember when it came out, and it was far-fetched at the time.
Yeah, a little bit. And the sort of main thrust of that book was that future shock refers to the name of a disease. It's the disease of us being whiplashed by how fast the future is coming upon us. And the book was written like as a warning to humanity. What should we do? Because look how fast things are moving now. Our sort of Darwinian evolution, our biological evolution, can't keep up with what's happening culturally and technologically. Yeah. So it's the 50th year, the 50th anniversary of that publication is coming up, and I think we're going to see here's a trends piece for you of looking into my crystal ball that in the next year in 2020. We're going to see a bunch of tips of the hat to this book, Future Shock. And part of that is that I just contributed a chapter to a book that's being published called Aftershock. And it's a bunch of trend experts and futurists have gotten together to create this book. And what's so fascinating to me is that this acceleration of culture has accelerated so quickly. It's not just the speed of culture, but the speed at which it's growing ever faster is happening so much faster than even Alvin Toffler imagined back in 1970. When he at the time he was talking mainly about automation and how we would all be sort of sideswiped by this whole automation. What's that going to mean to humanity? But already we're living for years with the internet, mobile telephones, and we're on the edge of the artificial intelligence universe and robotics and everything that's happening with personalized medicine.
Mm-hmm. Uh-oh. Did we lose you?
Hello.
So I think it's interesting that he brings this up. I guess we're going to have to try to get him back. Maybe try to get him to call in or send him a message. But when we look about this, talk about this stuff, it reminds me of the McKinsey study that talked about how the rate of change is. Oh, there you are. Welcome back.
Okay, we lost you for a second there.
Oh, you lost me?
Yeah. Yeah, for about 10, 20 seconds there.
I said my best stuff.
Yeah, I'm sure. That's what we were just saying.
Oh boy. Well, I'm not sure
we didn't
exactly.
Censor you.
Yeah. So wait, you were
talking about technology,
you were talking
right?
about the front edge of the AI piece. So do you have a rewind button? No, we're breaking up all sorts.
Yeah. So one of the things that we were talking about was that I think you were going to mention was the McKinsey piece.
Yep.
Which
smart. Did you just lose me again?
Yeah, I did.
We got it back.
Yeah. So we were just talking about if you're familiar with the McKinsey stat, where the pace of change is growing it's 10 times faster and 300 times the scope, which means the impact is 3,000 times greater than it was just a few years ago.
100 years.
And and part of that feeling is you can say, and we're used to that in the Northeast with the wind chill factor. It's that it's 40 degrees, but it feels like it's zero.
Right.
And that's sort of like the world we're living in now. Is that impact is that much greater? So I can't wait to see the aftershock come out.
Yeah, and the thing is, once artificial intelligence gets to a certain level, it's the computers are going to be teaching each other, or the learning bots or whatever they are, teaching each other without human intervention. And at that point, boy, does that learning happen so quickly. And what will be learned by these by these machines in days would have taken us years in the past.
Well, one of the Oh, go ahead, Daniel.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I'm just saying. I think we are on the cusp of monumental change that Alvin Toffler could.
Yeah, and this technology, I mean, they keep moving the time frame out. But when quantum computers come online, and you might have heard this stat, if not, I'll share another one that I use in the presentations, just to show the impact of this, because I think this pace of change is what most people don't get. They understand technology is coming. What they don't understand is how fast. And even when we talk about the future of work, the line is the future of work isn't coming, it's here. But even with that, people still don't grasp it. Mm-hmm. They think they get it. Oh, yeah, we understand with AI and we use it. We have an Alexa, we have a chat bot, or not a chat bot, but we have a device at home, and people use it, but they really don't get the connection because so much is just happening in the background. But one of the things that has the quantum computing that's come out is that when a quantum computer actually comes online, the processing speed is 100 million times faster than what it currently is.
Mm-hmm. Quid bits.
And that's really what the limitation is on some of this big data, is that there's so much data, it still takes time. And then all of a sudden, when you're taking what takes now is seconds, takes it down to a millisecond to be able to process that will be the difference. And the timeline keeps moving out. It was supposed to be 2019, 2020. Now it's like
Daniel,
2024.
What do you think the timeline is?
Yeah, for the singularity.
Yeah.
Well, the singularity is further out, but the quantum computer, just coming in with the quantum computing. So
I think everything is going to happen sooner than most of us imagine, and I think the reason for that is because as humans, it's very easy for us to look into the past and see how fast things have happened, and then most of us sort of extrapolate that, and we say, well, that's about how fast it's going to.
Wow.
Yeah. So I think we lost you for a second again.
I think I know where he's going with that.
But there is a quote, and I don't know where. I just heard it, and she didn't know who it was from, so I can't give credit. So we'll fall. We're going to fault on that line. But one of the things was that whatever you think is going to happen within the next 3 years, you're probably underestimating that. But what you think is going to happen within 10 years, you're probably correct.
Right. So it's when it gets closer. And I think that there's something to be said about how, people, I think where Daniel was going with this is that he's basically talking how we think in terms of linear change. And even Jason Silva, I've seen him talk. He talks about how we're experiencing exponential change right now.
Right. That's right.
And
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah. You came back online.
The technology. It's amazing how important it's become to all of our lives, but it still messes up. It
does. These supercomputers, I don't understand.
It does, which really comes down to one of the skills. It's being agile. Yes. We keep adding that. We keep talking about that, and there's certain people that are completely lost.
Right.
When something doesn't work, and our reliance on that. So hopefully we made this through without too many flubs. So hey, let's go back. Well, there was one thing here. Let's go back to that question because we did have somebody call in. The question they asked was, how would you get a job like that nowadays? And that's when you were talking about. I guess graduating college and going overseas, but now, I mean, if somebody wanted to work, that would be one. Is how would they create a job like that? But secondly, there's probably people that say, "Hey, how can I work for a company like Avantgarde
right now?"
I want a job. I want to work for you, Daniel. How would somebody, go about doing that other than the traditional ways? I guess they're asking. So.
Right. Send me your CV. That's like any company, we're always looking for people, for good people.
So what qualifications are you looking for? When you see that, I mean, so somebody says, "Hey, I'm interested in working for that." What skills are you looking for?
Yeah, I think that they would probably be most analogous to someone who would be an investigative reporter. So to sort of have those kinds of skills, and what I mean by that is we're looking for generalists more than we're looking for specialists. We're looking for people who can sort of take a helicopter view of what's we work hand in glove with a lot of companies that are specialists, and we collect a lot of information from them. We work with a lot of companies who are actually creating hard data, and our company is sort of the other side of that equation, where the hard data is where we start, and then we're the ones who sift through it to sort of make sense of it and go, okay, yeah, but what are these people looking for, and what buttons do you need to press to be more relevant with them? So we're looking for people who have those sort of softer skills.
Wow. These supercomputers.
Yes.
I think it's interesting because when I talk to companies about why I'm starting life work integration, I essentially mention that I've been a fly on the wall in over 1,000 different companies, all shapes and sizes, and inside of every industry. And to think that here he is he's got a network of people that have curiosity and the willingness to put it out there and try to see if they can't make a living off of it, or at least survive as they go through the world.
Yeah, I think the future belongs to people who are the future of work, to sort of bring this all back to work.
Yep.
Is about people who are nimble enough to understand how to make change in their lives.
Yeah.
Because we're living in times now where it's not like you work for a company for your whole life anymore. That social contract is gone.
Right.
And so now, so many companies, especially younger companies, look at their employees like pieces of furniture. They buy them when they need them. They throw them away when they don't need them anymore.
Yep.
And similarly, and so they're not engendering a sense of fealty to the company from the workers. The workers aren't feeling, as tight about the people they're working with. They sort of understand that they're being used by by companies.
Yep.
And so conversely, workers are using companies for their own means, and it's become more transactional than it was before. And so what that means is I'm seeing that the most successful workers of the future are people who have broad knowledge, who are easy, who sort of more malleable, who can change more quickly when their jobs are taken by robots, and not think about perhaps doing the same thing for their entire lives. But keeping an eye out on what else is going and where opportunities are, and taking advantage of those when they arise.
I'm glad you got there because, doing the research and reading about you, because I too can read. So I'm curious, I'm an up-and-comer in terms of evangelizing, life work integration. I love the idea. I'm going to start blogging. I've done some video blogs. What is it that you get the most out of? Here you are, you're looking back at your career. You're a phenomenal writer. You're an entrepreneur. You're curious as all get up. That's what made you get up and see the world. What is it that you love to do the most?
Well, the thing that I love about my work the most is I feel like I'm in school every day. Every day I get all this information sent to me that shows me all these incredible things that humans are doing, and it just keeps getting faster and more and more. Every day I get more stuff than I got the day before, and so that's what really jazzes me. This idea that the world is becoming more and more open and available to people with ideas, for people to implement ideas. And I find it so exciting to be learning about it and seeing where we are right now. And let me just add to that. When I was in school, I studied history. I'm a history graduate because I was always interested in how I got here. And can you still hear me?
You're live.
And what I love about trend spotting is it's about studying history as it
happens.
Yeah.
As it happens.
Yeah. Now we lost you. Yeah, you jinxed it.
I hope I'm doing a good job of finishing his sentences.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So that's AI, right?
Right.
It's artificial
Am I a
intelligence.
chatbot? Am I a chatbot?
I don't know. But one of the things that I did want to mention is that, because we are getting actually close to the end here, but one of the things I did want to mention is that on the WikiTrend site, we're talking about work and we're talking a lot about business, but there's a lot of other categories. So, there's about fashion and beauty, there's about food, healthcare, house and garden.
Yeah, and I just lost you at the end, right? You lost me at the end.
Yeah, at that word. So I just want to make everybody aware that your trends aren't only about business.
Right.
So if people are interested in working for you, or if they're interested in finding out what some of the other things that are up there, again, travel, hospitality, technology, retail, house and garden, beauty, and so forth. But before we hop in, because we are getting pretty close to the end, I just, because we are talking about the future of work, I would tell everybody to go up and look under wikitrend.org. That's singular, wikitrend.org. And look if you look under business, and under the first 2 or 3 pages, this is what I found. We found about in interview bots, and I know Keith and I work with HR a lot. And every time you say that, they say, "Oh, there's no way that you can possibly be better than a human being."
Wrong again, HR.
Well, yeah, right. It's only because the bar's pretty low. Yeah, but they had chatbots, but they had a housekeeping bot.
Yep.
The story about that. I found this one interesting. A business management assistant bot, that as far as coaching, and you can think back and you go, now how would a device or how would an algorithm be able to help be better than a manager? And you go, well, managers don't give any feedback now,
right.
and then and setting goals, but be able to take the data that's available and help them identify what activities that they have to improve on. How do you help goal setting? Because everybody's terrible at goal setting. So that was another really interesting one. I found this interesting. Other than dry cleaners now have to be, I guess, afraid of being extinct. There's a dry cleaning vending machine. You basically you go in, you drop your clothes off. The cost is low, and then it can actually cycle. You go pick it up, somewhere else the next day. Amazing things. From a job seeker standpoint, is one of the questions is people are looking for cultural sites. So you talk about disruptions in our space and in this job search space. There's a job site that assesses cultural fit, and job seekers can look at which companies they're best suited to based on, and I assume it's based on the reviews of things like Glassdoor and Indeed and Kununu and some of those other
Daniel,
places.
we're coming up at the end of the show here. It's been fantastic to have you. We're going to try to get you back at some point, because I kind of get the sense that we could reconnect and talk about completely different things at some future.
There's so much to talk about.
By tomorrow, we probably talk about different things.
Yeah. When is Aftershock coming out? It's still in public. It's not.
It'll be out. I'm not sure in a few months, because I actually just turned in my chapter 2 days ago. So
okay, well, we'll keep eyes on that. Yeah, we'll definitely keep eyes on that, and maybe when it comes out, we can get you back on, and maybe some of the other contributors. That would be great.
Because we just found out that, check this out, listening audience, we're close to 7,000 listeners a month.
Yeah.
And we know that we're not Joe Rogan yet, but at the end of the day, that's pretty cool for just
and it's growing. Yeah, we're going up. We're going up quite a bit each week. So Daniel, we're just about at the end. How can people get in touch with you? I've mentioned wikitrend.org, but what's the best way for them to get a hold of you?
Yep. Well, if they go on my website, which is daniellevine.com, DanielLevine.com, all my contact info is on there. And I run the Avant Guide Institute, and we're at avantguide.com, so you can check that out too. I'm easy to get to. I'm on LinkedIn. I am on social media. For business purposes,
just not Facebook, right?
Me too.
Well, no, even Facebook, but I'm just I believe in privacy, and we can have a whole other conversation about that on another show.
Yeah. Oh, there's so many topics. I was so excited that you accepted the invitation to be on the show, and there's so much more that we can talk about. So I do appreciate you taking your time out, and we'll definitely be in touch. Any final comments? You got a few seconds here. Any final comments?
Yeah. I think what you're doing is totally on trend. The whole thing about podcasting is part of our future, and the show sounds great. And I'm thrilled that you have me on. Thanks so much.
Well, thank you again. Yeah, much. Absolutely. Daniel Levine, our guest, Geeks, Geezers, and Googlization. Can't even say those words anymore. We want to thank our listeners again. We're just about out of time here. We're always interested in what's on your mind. Make sure that you chat with us during the show at w4cy.com. Send us comments afterwards. You can connect with Keith or I on LinkedIn and Twitter. Thanks again to JobVite and Success Performance Solutions for helping us be on the show. Don't forget to join us next week at Wednesday, 1 p.m. Eastern Time on w4cy.com. You can listen to any of our podcasts on iTunes, which is Apple Podcasts now, SoundCloud, Spotify, Amazon, Alexa, Roku, Google Play.
I dare you to not find us.
Yeah, absolutely. Next week, we're going to be talking about the new Google update that is coming down. You've heard me talk about mobile first. Yep. It is going, they just notched it up a ratchet. So for companies that are struggling to find employees now and are not listed on Google for jobs, beware. Ready. It's getting a lot tougher next week. So until the next episode of the Geeks, Geezers, and Googlization show, this is Ira Wolf and Keith Campagna. Don't let the shift hit your plans.